Dito? Hindi, nakakain. Kasi kaya ako nabibisit ako, nagpapa-admit eh. Naabala ko kasi, pagka nirecord ko na at nag-admit pa ako, sayang ang oras ko. Kaya ngayon, hindi na ako mag-admit pag late. Nakakalimutan kong i-record yung lecture ko. Okay. Ayokong ulitin yung lecture ko. Kasi nadidistract ako, may magpapa-admit, tapos hindi ko pa pala napipindot yung record. Miss Gamotea, tanda mo yung rule ko na yan. After 9, sarado na kagad tayo. Ha, Miss Gamotea, ha? Miss Gamotea, kausap kita. Tandaan mo yan. After 9 o'clock, at hindi pa sila nakapag-log, bibigyan ko sila ng 5 minutes, it's closed already. No one, I will not be admitting. Kasi nalilimutan ko kasi imbis na i-post, ipindutin ko na yung record, nalilimutan ko tuloy kasi may magpapa-admit. Next time, wala na talaga. Okay? Next. Another purpose of lodging the goods declaration is for transit. Meaning, the goods shall be withdrawn from the Bureau of Customs, okay, and it will be transferred and transported to another customs office. Ang tawag po doon is transit po. Admission, transit, maybe, or are analogous po. Yung isa po, yung admission po, from BOC, dadalhin ng economic zone. Ito naman po transit, withdrawal from the BOC, dadalhin po ng another customs office, or pagka po customs banded warehousing naman po, warehousing entry, okay? It will be withdrawn from the Bureau of Customs, then it will be transferred and delivered to a customs banded warehouse. Okay? So those are what? The purpose of withdrawing, or those are the purpose of the lodgement of goods declaration. So kung makikita ninyo po sa number 3 po ng page 173 po, guys, the author has reiterated for which purpose or for what purpose a goods declaration may be, okay, may be lodged. So, nandyan po ang consumption, andyan po ang warehousing, nandyan po ang admission, nandyan din po ang conditional importation, customs transit. Ang conditional importation po, dadalhin po dito sa Pilipinas, dahil gagamitin lang for several months after use, ibabalik din po sa pinanggalingan. Ang tawag po dyan is conditional importation. And most of the goods covered by conditional importation is subject or is covered by Section 800, conditionally pre-importation po. Yan po yung mga darating dito sa Pilipinas. Tapos, after use, ibabalik din po. Kaya po tawag sa kanila, conditional importation. And, with respect to payment of duties and taxes, no payment shall be made. O, ang lagi po nagbabayad ng duties and taxes dyan sa lahat ng types po is the consumption entry. And the rest po, wala pong binabayarang duties and taxes. Klaro? Miss Javier, Miss Gutierrez, can you recite to me what are the types of goods declaration? Can you explain to me one by one, please? Conditional importation. Okay, so those are the five types of goods declaration. Okay? So, yan po yan, no? So, pagka po sinabing consumption, automatic po, it will be or it is destined for domestic consumption and it will be or the duties and taxes will be paid. But insofar as B, C, D, and E is concerned, no payment shall be made regarding duties and taxes. Kasi po, pagka po nag-file kayo ng warehousing, normally po, wala pong payment ng duties and taxes kasi po, it's destined to a customs bonded warehouse. Specifically, when the goods consist of raw materials, okay, consigned or destined to a customs bonded manufacturing warehouse. Admission po, PESA locators, PESA enterprise, conditionally or conditional importation, shipments or goods covered by Section 800, conditionally pre-importation, wala rin pong binabayaran. Customs transit, pag nag-withdraw po or if the goods are withdrawn from the BOC, then transferred to, normally po wala pong binabayaran unless upon arrival of the goods, let's say from Port of Manila, inilipat ng Port of Subic, and in the Port of Subic, it was withdrawn for domestic consumption, that would be the time na magbabayad siya. Pero the withdrawal from the Port of Manila for transfer to Subic, wala po siyang babayaran. But once the goods arrive at the Port of Subic and the consignee withdraws it for domestic consumption, magbabayad na po siya. Okay, next. So, Section 400. The rule regarding passing or entering of goods in a customs office. 402. Okay. All imported articles, unless otherwise provided by this law, shall be subject to lodgment of goods declaration. And goods declaration may be either for consumption, for warehousing, for admission, conditionally importation or conditional importation, and lastly is for customs transit. Klaro, Mr. Karandang? Klaro, Miss Magsino? Klaro, Miss Bulaon? Ah, Section 402, please. Gabiansa. Okay, Miss Gabiansa, what is the rule? Ba, may manok pa dyan. Ano ba yan? May tumitila ako pa manok na. Katayin ko yan. Kaninong manok yan? Nagsasabong ka na rin ba, Miss Gabiansa? Sabi mo sa kapitbahay mo, nagagalit si Mr. Dorote, katayin daw niya yan. Oh. O ba, may nagsasabong pa, may nagpupustahan yata dyan, may tupada yata. Mr. Karandang, can you explain to me or explain to us the rule, Mr. Karandang? Yes? Can you explain the rule? For row 2, please. Okay, can you state now the rule? Tingnan nyo to, ha? Yan po, formal entry and informal entry. Maliwanag po ba? All goods declaration for consumption. Okay? Shall be cleared through a formal entry process. So what is the general rule? All goods for consumption or destined for consumption shall be subject to a formal entry process clearance. That's the rule. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? So, if that is the general rule, there is an exception. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? What is the exception? Ano po? Ano po ang sagot? So therefore, if there is a general rule, there is an exception, right? So what are the exceptions? Oh, first distinction or first exception and the distinction between formal entry and informal entry is at the board. Pakicheck na po. Now, tingnan nyo po ha. As a general rule, all goods destined for domestic consumption shall be cleared through a formal process or formal entry process except the following shipment po. Okay? Except for the following goods which shall be cleared through an informal entry process. Commercial goods of commercial nature. So in other words, class, goods of commercial nature, pwedeng marami at pwedeng bago. A commercial nature means more than the or it is more than one or it is brand new. However, if the value FOB or FCA value is less than 50,000 pesos, okay, then the same goods shall be cleared through an informal entry process. Ms. Gamotaya, nakikita mo ba yung illustration ko? Tama ba ito? Formal entry, 50,000 plus, either FOB or FCA. Tama? Tama po ba? Tama po ba? Mr. Karandang, pakitingin. Itong IE ko, informal entry. Tama ba yung sinabi ko dyan? Okay, less than 50,000. Again, what? FOB or FCA. Tama? So, this is the rule. So, regardless whether it is in commercial nature or commercial quantity, as long the FOB or FCA value is more than or 50,000 plus, then consumption entry and formal entry shall be used. Regardless of the commercial nature and commercial quantity, as long the FOB value or FCA value is less than 50,000 pesos, FCA or FOB, then it shall be cleared through an informal entry process. Clear, guys? Klaro po? Clear po? Sumagot kayo. Guys, maliwanag po ba? Yan po yung una. Provided that 50,000 FOB value or FCA value shall be subject to adjustment to be made by the Secretary of Finance based upon the Consumer Price Index as published by the Philippine Statistics Authority. Tama po ba, Mr. Karandag? Ibig sabihin po niyan, hindi po permanente yung 50,000 FOB or FCA. It can be increased or it can be decreased. So, pagdating ng araw, pwedeng sabihin, from now on, hindi na po 50,000 ang limit. Pag 75 na po, pwede bang gawin yun the Secretary of Finance? Yes po. Kailan po niya pwedeng gawin yon? Every 3 years. Ibig sabihin po niyan, if the CMTA took effect in 2016, 2019, pwede nang i-adjust ni Secretary of Finance ito. Pwedeng gawing 70,000 or even 100,000. Based on what? The CPI as published by the PSA. Tama, Mr. Karandang? So, ibig sabihin yan, pwedeng itaas ito, pwede ring ibaba. It will depend upon the Consumer Price Index as published by the Philippine Statistics Authority. So, pwedeng itumas, pwedeng bumaba. Next, please. Letter B po. Ito po, wala na tayong pinag-uusapan. Okay? Okay? Ayan, ha? Personal and household effects po. Ito pong personal and household effects po. Okay, under the section or under section 800 po, meron po tayong allowed. Tingnan po natin kung magkano po yung personal and household effects sa section 1, section 800. Mr. Karandang, pakicheck mo nga yung section 800, paragraph F. Kung magkano yung allowed na pwedeng iuwi ng isang returning or OFW po. Magkano po yung pwedeng iuwi? Meron po siyang 350 or 350,000 sa returning residents. Meron din pong para sa OFW na, okay, magkano, Mr. Karandang? 150,000 po. Meron pong 350 at meron din pong 150. Pagdating po sa personal and household effects covered by Section 800, Paragraph G and Paragraph F, okay? Meron pong 350, meron pong 250, at meron pong 150. Okay? Sa returning resident po. Pagdating naman po sa OFW, meron po siyang privilege to bring in, free from duties and taxes, 150,000 FOB or FCA value po. Maliwanag po? Ulitin ko po ha, para ma-review po kayo. Okay, under section paragraph F, a returning resident may bring in 350,000, 250,000, and 150,000 depending on the length of stay abroad. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Sa page 374 makikita yon. Now, if it is an returning OFW, that returning OFW is allowed to bring in personal and household effects up to 150,000 a year po. Maliwanag po, Mr. Karandang? So, in either case, tandaan niyo po yon. Ang gagamitin pong process is informal entry po. Klaro po? Klaro po ba? Hindi po formal entry ang gagamitin, but instead, it is informal entry. So, household and personal effects brought in. Tingnan nyo maigi para maintindihan nyo maigi, no? Brought in by, ayan, passengers, including, of course, including, of course, returning residents, returning OFWs. They are not subject to a formal entry process. However, they shall be covered and cleared through an informal entry process. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po ba? Yan, ha? So, pagdating po sa personal and household effects of goods of returning residents, returning OFWs, meron po tayong sa returning residents, meron po tayong 350, 250, and 150. Pagdating naman po doon sa returning OFWs, meron po tayong 150. And this 350, 250, and 150, and 150 again, may be adjusted by the Commissioner of Customs. What is that value? Either FOB value or FCA value. Of course, before the Commissioner of Customs may adjust it or can adjust it, the Commissioner of Customs has to harmonize first the increase or the adjustment of the amount to be covered by the informal entry process pursuant to section or paragraph A of section 402. Si Commissioner, hindi niya pwedeng i-adjust ng walang consultation with the Secretary of Finance because under paragraph A, it is only the Secretary of Finance who can adjust it. But insofar as the commercial value of or commercial price or commercial value of household and personal effects, so yung letter A po, nasa power po or it is within the power of the Secretary of Finance, while in letter B, it is within the power of the Commissioner of Customs. However, whenever the Commissioner of Customs adjusts it, the Commissioner shall consult first the Secretary of Finance, and of course, the adjustment shall be always, subject to 3 years period and subject to the Consumer Price Index as published by the Philippine Statistics Authority. Kung itataas po yung 150, itataas po yung 250 or 350, it has to be done by the Commissioner of Customs or the Secretary of Finance every 3 years from date of the effectivity of the CMTA. So, hindi pwedeng taon-taon i-adjust mo. No. And when it is every 3 years adjustment, the adjustment shall be always based upon the CPI as published by the PSA. Kung gano'n na po ba kababa ang pera ng Pilipinas. Yan po ang pinagbabasihan ng adjustment. Okay? Tandaan niyo po yan, ha? Maliwanag po ba? Now, all importation entered through a formal entry process shall be covered by a letter of credit or any verifiable commercial documents evidencing payment, or in case where there is no sale for export by any commercial document, indicating the commercial value of the goods. Ulitin ko po, whenever a shipment is to be cleared through a formal process, dalawa po ang klase ng pagbabayad ng importer sa seller. Ano po yon? LC? Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Or anong tawag po dyan? Ito po LC, ito po yun na any verifiable document, okay, evidencing payment. Ano po ito? Ang tawag po doon sa isa, LC, yung isa naman po, first is LC, and the other one is non-LC po. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po. So therefore, dito sa LC, makikita ng Bureau of Customs kung magkano talaga ang binayaran ng importer sa seller. If it is LC. Okay? If it is non-LC, then the BOC can verify how much was really paid by the importer to the exporter. Yan po ang ibig sabihin nun. Either LC or non-LC. Miss Gabionza, do you still remember what are non-LC transaction? Ayun, sumagot na yung manok. Panay yung sagot ng manok. Sabi niya, hindi niya alam. Naita-translate ko pa yung ano. Sabi niya, hindi niya alam. Mr. Karandang, can you tell us what are those non-LC payments? Documents against payment. Documents against acceptance. Yan po yan. Ulitin ko po. Miss Manok, Miss Gabionza, yan po. DAP, DAA. Okay. Direct remittance. Telegraphic transfer. Open account arrangement. These are what? Non-LC. Okay? Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Di ba ito LC with bank charge, right? This one? Without bank charge po. Tama? Yan po yun, ha? Para at least maalala ninyo. In other words, class, the payments of the cost of the goods by the buyer, importer, to the seller, exporter, under the last paragraph of Section 402, provides that it may be paid either LC transaction or non-LC transaction po. Klaro, guys? Klaro, guys? Let us distinguish formal entry and informal entry. Okay? A formal entry normally is subject to, okay, random examination or physical inspection of the goods. Normally po, nung panahon po namin, 10% lang po ang ini-examine. Okay? Kung 10 pakete po, 1 pakete lang po ang bubuksan. If the shipment is being cleared through a formal entry process. Okay? Maliwanag po. Random ang examination. Pagka natapat ka sa super green lane or green lane, normally po, wala pong examination. Depending po on the selectivity system. But in IE or in informal entry, ang examination po is 100%. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po! Okay. Miss Bulaon, nakikita mo ba yung illustration ko? O natatakpan ko? Natatakpan ko ba? Okay, kita. Nakikita mo rin ako. Okay, very good. Now, so, the distinction, the first distinction is this. First, 50,000 and above, FOB or FCA, automatic po, formal entry. Less than 50,000 FOB or FCA ay informal entry po ang gagamitin. Okay? Now, with respect to examination, dito po sa formal entry, ang practice po dati, 10% lang po ang ini-examine. But insofar as informal entry is concerned, it is subject to 100%. Kaya po, ikaw, Miss Gutierrez, pagka po ikaw ang if you become a customs examiner, your function is to examine, right? Tama, Miss Gutierrez? No. When you are assigned to examine a formal entry shipment, normally po, kung isang container po, isang dibente ang i-examinin mo, are you going to examine all the contents of the 20-footer container? Alin lang ang i-examinin mo? Hindi po, 10% lang po. Huwag yung kaya, yung 10%. Tingnan mo yung nasa board, Miss Gutierrez. Miss Gamotea, you are the customs examiner assigned at the informal entry division. Ito po yung container. Kung ito po yung container, pag informal entry po, normally 10% lang po. But if it is informal entry, Miss Gamotea and Miss Gabionsa, it is 100%. What does 100% examination means? Anong lahat? Anong gagawin na sa loob? Ilalabas. Ano sabi mo, Miss Gabionsa? Lahat. Andito ka, Miss Gabionsa. Ikaw yung ex, Miss Gabionsa. Tama? O, Miss Gamotea, ikaw yung ex. Oh, Miss Bulaon, ikaw ito. Ikaw yung examiner. Ito yung container na examinin mo. Paano gagawin mo? Ang layo na, ang laki na, pupunta mo yung gandulo. X-ray. Kaya lang po, hindi pwedeng X-ray. Kailangan po ng 100% pagka po informal entry. Intrusive talaga po ang informal entry. Kasi ito pong formal entry, non-intrusive po yan, X-ray or scanning machine. But with respect to informal entry, it is intrusive po. Manual po ang examination. Sasampa ka ngayon doon sa loob ng container. Miss Gamotea. Magtututuwad ka doon kasi bubuksan mo yung lahat nun. Mr. Karandang, matanong kita. If you are a returning resident or returning OFW, ito po yung back, ito po yung nasa likod, ito po yung nasa front. Ito po yung truck. Tama? Ito po yung driver. Ako po ito yung driver. Si BBD ang driver. If you plan to smuggle as a returning resident or a returning OFW, where would you place the smuggled item or smuggled items po? Informal nga po 100% tayo Yeah, informal po. Yung pinag-uusapan pa natin, informal po. Saan bandang likod? Sa likod ni BBD? Saan ba yung likod po? Malapit dito sa front or sa back? Dito, dito. So dito mo ilalagay yung smuggled goods. Ay, hindi nga, we're talking here of 100%, Mr. Karandang. Kahit naman 10% yan eh. Doon mo ilalagay sa likuran, dito, dito, dito. Nasaan ba yung pintuan ng container, Mr. Karandang? Dito or dito? Ito po yung ano, bakit di ka po nakakakita ng container? Ang likuran niya, nandito. Andito pintuan yan. Ito walang pintuan dito. Dito po ilalagay. Yan po. Kasi bakit? Pagbukas mo, kita kagad. Kung smuggle dyan, right? Mr. Karandang, mag-iisip ka rin. So kung if I were a returning resident and I am planning to smuggle BMW at si Miss Gamoteya ang magiging examiner, kilala ko mabait, hindi siya nag 100%. Makikita niya ba yung BMW? Mr. Karandang, pag 100%, kita niya ba? Yes, of course. Ibig sabihin yan, guys, what I'm trying to drive at is, if it is 100% examination, you have to examine all. Kasi po pagka ikaw customs examiner ka, ang sabi sa iyo 100%, napagod ka na, naalikabukan ka na, okay, hanggang dito ka lang, hindi mo mahuhuli yung BMW kasi if I were the smuggler, I won't be putting it here or here. I would be putting it where it cannot be seen and noticed by the examiner. Right, Mr. Karandang? Yes, kasi kung mag-smuggle ako, pag nilagay mo dito, binuksan ka agad, di kitang-kita ka agad, right, Mr. Karandang? Dito ko ilalagay sa dulo. That's why, if it is informal entry, 100% po, kasi normally, informal entry process is the process that is being used to smuggle po. Klaro, guys? Kaya mas maigpit po ang customs pag informal entry process. Klaro? Claro. Okay. Claro, Miss Javier, Miss Gutierrez. Miss Gabionza. Miss Gabionza, pagka 100%, hindi lang bubuksan yung pintuan dito, hanggang dito, kailangan makarating ka or kailangan ibaba lahat yan para makita mo lahat kung ano laman, right? That is 100%. Handa ka ba nung ganon? Na pupunta ka, bubuksan mo yung pintuan, tapos itutulak ka pataas, o magdanan ka. From here, pupunta ka dito para makita mo kung ano yung laman ng dulo. Baka mamaya may manok din dyan. Tama, Miss Gabionza? Okay, next please. 403, yan na naman, may manok na naman. Miss Gutierrez, si Miss Magsino ba nandyan, Miss Gutierrez, o drop na? Nag-drop na ba yan? O napasok pa ba si Magsino? Okay. May motorsiklo naman. Kay Gabionsa, manok. Dito naman, motorsiklo. Iba-iba talaga yung no? Iba-iba talaga yung mga background ninyo. Okay, Miss Magsino, 403 please. Pakilakas, hindi ko marinig. Okay. Sandali lang po, sandali lang po. So, when we speak of provisional, it means temporary po. Temporary goods declaration. Hindi po siya regular goods declaration. Why provisional goods declaration, Mr. Karandang? When does good or provisional goods declaration occur? No, 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 no. When does provisional goods declaration occur? Kailan po nangyayari nagkakaroon ng provisional goods declaration? Okay, number one, when the declarant does not have all the information. Kung kulang po yung information niya as to the information of what has been imported, then that would be the time that the importer may avail of provisional goods declaration. Or, kumpleto po yung information niya, the problem is, the importer cannot submit all the required shipping documents. That would be the time again that the importer can avail or apply for goods declaration. So, there are only two instances wherein the Bureau of Customs may allow the lodgement of provisional goods declaration. Kasi pag tinanggal mo po yung provisional goods, the word provisional, regular goods declaration po siya. Tama po ba? Ibig sabihin po nun, pag sinabi pong hindi siya provisional, kumpleto po. Kumpleto as to information and complete as to shipping documents. If it is provisional goods declaration, it is incomplete either as to information or either as to shipping documents po. Kulang po, kaya po provisional lang muna siya. Did you get it, Mr. Karandang? Okay, so therefore, pagka po kulang information or kulang yung dokumento, it does not mean that it is already end of the world. No! The importer can still lodge the goods declaration. However, it is not complete. It is only provisional. Pag sinabi pong provisional, kulang ka ng confirmation, anong gagawin mo doon sa information na kulang, Mr. Karandang? You have to complete it. Kasi hindi pa siya available. Tama? Kaya po, okay, kulang po yung information, then the information is not yet available, then you will be given by the Bureau of Customs to complete the information. Okay? Before or after allowing you to lodge a provisional goods declaration, sasabihin ng BOC, sige, papayagan namin makapag-lodge ka ng goods declaration, but provisional lang. However, you have to complete the information we needed. Right, Mr. Karandang? Ngayon, kulang ka ng, kumpleto ka ng information, kulang ka naman ng kopya ng airway bill or commercial invoice or packing list. Kulang yung isa doon, hindi mo, tatlo yung dapat mong kailangan, dalawa lang yung pwede na isubmit mo. Kulang ka ba? Yes po. Papayagan ka ba? In spite of the incomplete documents, the answer is yes. You will be allowed not complete goods declaration, but provisional goods declaration. And in case the BOC allows you to lodge a provisional goods declaration, you as an importer, we have to complete the information or you have to complete the shipping documents. Right, Mr. Karandang? Okay. Now, one of the conditions when the BOC allows provisional goods declaration is this, provided that all information are substantial. Okay? And, substantial po. Ibig sabihin po ng substantial as to description of the goods, substantial as to the value or the price of the goods, substantial as to the quantity of the goods, substantial as to the amount of freight, amount of insurance. Malalaman ng Bureau of Customs kung magkano ang babayaran mong duties and taxes. Did you get it, Mr. Karandang? Kasi po, pag wala pong insurance, kulang po, right? Tama ba, Ms. Bulaon? Kasi po, pag walang insurance, how can the BOC compute the DB, right, Ms. Bulaon? May insurance nga po, pero wala pong freight o hindi po siya substantial. So, ibig sabihin po, provided that all the information are substantial and substantial po. Meaning, the BOC can determine the dutiable value. Maliwanag? Maliwanag po. Mr. Karandang, what if the description of the goods is not given? Is that substantial or not substantial? Unsubstantial. Substantial po ba pagka walang description ng goods? Hindi. Why? Because how can the BOC classify it? Tama ba? Paano mo may kaklasify yan? How would the BOC classify it and determine the amount of rate of duty to be imposed if the goods declaration is without the description of the goods, right, Mr. Karandang? Hindi pwede. Kailangan po kumpleto. Kumpleto in the sense na yung ibang information na kailangan ng BOC is not necessary for them to determine the correct dutiable value and the customs duty. But as long the information given, although lacking, the BOC would be able to compute and determine the amount of duty and dutiable value and duty, then that means the information is substantial. Maliwanag? Yan po yun. Maliwanag? So therefore, provisional goods declaration shall be subject to substantial information to be given by the declarant. And that's word substantial information. That would enable the BOC to compute for the DB, to determine the rate of duty because of the classification, and to compute for the customs duty po. Substantial na po yan. And second condition, aside from substantial information, there would be an undertaking to be made by the importer to submit the required information or the completion of the document within the 45 days period from date of what? Filing or lodgement of the goods declaration. If the goods declaration is lodged today, Sir Karandang, tama ba? Ano ngayon? January 13. Kulang ng info. Kaya lang, kahit kulang ang info, malalaman pa rin ng DB, malalaman pa rin ng duty. Or kulang naman ng invoice. Pero kahit kulang ng invoice, mailalaman pa rin kung magkano ang DB or magkano ang duty. Okay? Substantial. However, there would be an obligation on the part of the importer to submit the lacking information or lacking documents 45 days starting tomorrow. Right, Mr. Karandang? Kung na-lodge mo ngayon, kulang o na-lodge mo ngayon yung provisional goods declaration, bilang ka ng 45 days, not from today, but the following day. Maliwanag po ba? Maliwanag po ba? Okay. Please continue, Ms. Magsino. Provided. Ms. Magsino. Yes. O, tama ba yung sinabi ko, Mr. Karandang? Papayagan ka. Kaya lang, kailangan yung information mo substantial. Tama? So, dalawa po, substantial information and an undertaking that the importer will be submitting the, what? Complete information or complete documents. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Within 45 days from date of lodgement or from date of filing. And the same 45 days may be extended by the Bureau of Customs for valid reason. So, 45 plus 45 po. Tama po ba? Okay. Mr. Karandang, assuming the goods declaration has been admitted provisional goods declaration today? Hanggang kailan dapat isubmit yung kailangang information or document? 45 days. Paki nga. O, lagay na lang natin hanggang kailan? Sige. Hindi. Lagay na lang natin, kunwari, bala na kung kailan. Kailan yung 45 days? Pakibilang nga, Miss Gabionsa. Panay lang, tilaok ng manok mo dyan. February 28 plus 45 days. What if it's already February 29? May 29 ba ngayon, Miss Gabionsa? What if, lagay natin March 1 na lang para safe, Mr. Karandang, tama ba? The importer has not yet completed the information or has not yet submitted the complete document. What happened now? What if there was no extension? What will happen now? What will now the effect? Miss Gutierrez? Yes, go ahead. Ang sabi ko, ganito, ang sabi ninyo hanggang February 28, the importer has to complete the information or has to submit the complete documents, right? What if it is already March 1, the importer has not yet complete the information or has not yet submitted the documents? What will happen now? What's now the legal effect? Eh, hindi nga siya nakahingi ng extension. Mr. Bolaon, Miss Bolaon, what will happen now? Wala po. Ang tinatanong ko lang, hanggang February 28 lang dapat kumpletuhin. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Miss Gamutea? Tama ba? Tama ba? I'm asking you guys. Sandali lang. Mr. Nawawala yung connection ko, Mr. Anthony. Sandali lang po. Calm down. Nandito pa po ako. Nagle-lecture pa. O, yan na. Okay na? O, nandyan na ako. Okay. Tinatanong ko sa inyo, hanggang February 28 lang dapat kumpletuhin. Kung walang extension hanggang March or February 28 lang. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Ngayon, kung meron extension, 28 plus 45 pa uli. February 28 plus 45 days pa uli. What if walang extension, March na, hindi pa rin nakakakomplete? What happens now? No, it shall be declared abandoned impliedly. Ganun po yun. Kasi po hindi ka nag-comply eh. Failure to comply with the provisional goods declaration condition. Okay? The effect is that it will be declared impliedly abandoned by the Bureau of Customs. Now, if there was an extension of 45 days and the importer failed to comply with the condition, after the extension, again, the shipment or the good shall be declared impliedly abandoned. Yan pong epekto niyan. Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Okay, next please. Continue. Okay. Miss Magsino, you. Dalawa pong klase ng goods declaration, no? Sandali lang po. Okay. Okay. There are two types of goods declaration. One is complete and the other one is incomplete. Yung pong incomplete, yung po yung provisional goods declaration. Tama, Mr. Karandang? Okay, very good. Now, would there be a difference regarding treatment? Wala po. Ang sabi po kasi dyan, Sir, pasensya ka na. May klase lang ako, sir. Nasa recording po ako. Hello? Sir, pasensya ka na. Antay-antay lang po, sir. Kasi ang dami naming gawa, sir. Ang dami naming gawa. Pasensya na kayo, sir. Okay? So, therefore, whether it is complete or provisional or incomplete goods declaration, the BOC would treat them the same. No favoritism, no discrimination as to treatment. Parehas lang po ang treatment sa kanila. Guys, naintindihan nyo ba? Guys, ibig sabihin po niyan, pag sinabi pong complete declaration and it is or it is formal entry, 10% lang po o random examination lang po. Right, Mr. Karandang? But if it is provisional or incomplete goods declaration, and the law says 10% or random examination, then the same examination rule shall be applied to provisional goods declaration. Right, Mr. Karandang? Hindi po pwedeng sabihin, o ikaw, kumpleto, 10% examination ka lang. Ikaw, provisional, 100%. They cannot do that because the law says, whether it is complete or incomplete or provisional goods declaration, they shall be treated fairly and equally. Klaro po? Kaya baka mamaya pagdating ng araw, naging broker kayo, nag-file kayo ng provisional goods declaration. Sabi ni examiner, provisional ka, 100% ka. Can you argue on that? Pwede ba makipagtalo kayo doon, Mr. Karandang? Oh, teka muna, Mr. Karandang, ulitin ko yung question ko, no? Si Miss Bulaon, nag-file ng goods declaration complete. Ikaw nag-file ka naman ng goods declaration incomplete or provisional. Ako po yung customs examiner. Ang sabi ko, Miss Bulaon, ikaw 10% examination lang. Si Mr. Karandang, 100%. Anong hindi pwede? Hindi ko pwedeng gawin yon? So, ibig sabihin po niyan, duty treatment, kung magkano po ang dapat bayaran ni Miss Bulaon, na pares lang naman kayo ni Mr. Karandang, pares lang po kayo, hindi pwedeng maging discriminatory ako. Maliwanag po ba? Ibig sabihin niya, kung examination, ganito. O, kung ganito ang valuation, ganito din lang. Pares lang. Otherwise, I would be violating the second paragraph of Section 403. Hindi pwedeng magkaiba ang treatment, specifically the duty. Right? Pwede bang ilaban mo? Pwede bang i-argue mo sa akin, Mr. Karandang? Sir, hindi pwede po yan. Kung siya po, complete, ako provisional or incomplete, then our goods declaration shall be treated the same or identical. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po? Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Eh baka mamaya sinabi sa iyo, oh, Miss Bulaon, ang in-import mo cellphone, let's say ha, nag-import ka 5% ng cellphone, Miss Bulaon. Ikaw naman, Mr. Karandang, nag-import ka rin ng cellphone, the same brand, the same item with Miss Bulaon. Sabi niya, provisional ka, dapat sa iyo 10%. Payag ka, Mr. Karandang? Hindi po, kasi po nakalagay dito, the same treatment. Okay? Okay, the same duty treatment of goods declaration shall be applied or observed whether the goods declaration is complete or incomplete po. Wala pong diskriminasyon pagdating po sa duty. Next paragraph, Ms. Bulaon. Ms. Bulaon. So in this third paragraph, the shipment dutiable value is determined although there is incomplete information or incomplete documents. However, the BOC wants to complete it first before it shall be released by them. Kumpletuhin mo muna yung information or kumpletuhin mo muna yung dokumento mo. That's the rule. Hindi ka papayagan ng BOC. Pag nakumpleto mo, saka lang po. Now, question, Mr. Karandang, while the importer is waiting for the information that is required by the BOC, or while the document is, you are waiting for the document to complete the shipping document, can you ask for the release of the goods? Yes or no? Hindi po, tinatanong ko muna kung yes or no. Yes, provided that while waiting for the complete information, okay, while waiting for the completion of the documents, the importer may ask for the release of the documents provided that the importer posts a security of the amount of duties and taxes. Kasi bini-verify pa po kung tama po ba yung babayaran duties and taxes based on what? Provisional or incomplete goods declaration. Pag dumating po yung information at tumaas po, ibang usapan po yan. Tama po? Yan po yun. Okay? Next please. 404. Miss Garcia, Carol. Okay, stop. Who are the owner of imported goods? Number one, the holder of the bill of lading or the holder of airway bill. Or the consignee or the importer. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po. So therefore, if a person is the consignee or importer of goods, the presumption is that he or she is the owner of the goods, right? That's it. If Miss Bulaon is the holder of the bill of lading or airway bill, presumption is Miss Bulaon is the owner. If Miss Bulaon has endorsed the BL or airway bill to Mr. Karandang, naming Mr. Karandang as the owner, then Miss Bulaon is no longer the owner. It is already Mr. Karandang. Maliwanag po ba? Maliwanag po ba? Okay. If consigned to order, meaning it is consigned to the bank, letter of credit po. Pagka po letter of credit, nagpadala si supplier, nakakonsign po sa bangko. Pero ang consignee po, Miss Bulaon. So pagka letter of credit po ha, makikita ninyo pa, pagka naka-letter of credit po yan, nakalagay po yung pangalan ng shipper galing sa abroad. Kanino ipinadala? Sa bangko kasi letter of credit. Tapos sa baba ng bangko, the ultimate consignee. Kung ang consignee talaga is Miss Bulaon, then it is owned by the bank, but after the bank has endorsed it, then Miss Bulaon now becomes the owner. Ganun po yan. Next please. Garcia, ano ba inaantay mo dyan? Ikaw, Miss Garcia. Yan. Tingnan nyo itong maigi ha, para malaman ninyo. There are so many person considered owner of imported goods. One, the consignee or importer. B, or number two, the holder of the bill of lading or the holder of airway bill. Okay? the person who was endorsed, okay, by the consignee. O, consignee to another person. Yan po. So, general rule, para hindi na po natin masyadong pahirapan. Ano? 1, consignee or importer. 2, holder of the bill of lading or holder of an airway bill. 3, underwriter. 4, salvors po. When does an underwriter become the owner of imported goods? When the importer abandons the goods because it is totally destroyed. Okay? It becomes the property now. O yan natin, mo, totally destroyed. Nagkaroon ng banggaan ng sasakyan, Mr. Carandang and Ms. Gutierrez. Naintindihan nyo ba ako? Mr. Garcia, nagkaroon ng banggaan ng sasakyan dyan sa MacArthur. Hindi naman namatay yung driver. However, both motor vehicles were totally destroyed. And both motor vehicles were insured, covered by an insurance policy. Ngayon, si Mr. Carandang yung may-ari ng isa. Si Miss Bulaon yung may-ari ng isa. Nakita nilang dalawa, wala nang pakikinabangan sa sasakyan nila. Okay? Mr. Carandang, tingin mo, wala nang pakinabang to, wala nang, totally wrecked na yung sasakyan mo. What are you going to do now? Miss Bulaon, nakita mo yung sasakyan mo, hindi na pakikinabangan. What are you going to do now? Abandon it. Abandon it, then file a claim against the insurance company para bayaran ka. After the insurance company has paid you, then that car or wrecked car or totally wrecked car belongs to them now. Kasi binayaran ka na. Ngayon, sa kargamento po, ganito. Yung kargamento po nasira during transit or during loading or unloading, and after it was seen or after it has been examined, it was declared totally destroyed. If I were the importer, I'm going to abandon it. Ba't ko pa kukunin yan? Saan ko pa gagamitin yan? Sira na yan. And since the goods are all covered by insurance premium, then ako may-ari, sira na yan. Para bang ganito yan eh. Yung inimport ko, Miss Bulaon, Mr. Carandang, inimport ko kabayo, pangarerang kabayo, napilayan ng 2 paa. Anong klaseng damage yun? Is it partial damage or totally damage? Totally damage kasi pangarere, napilayan ng 2 paa. Ano yan? Hindi na makakatakbo na mabilis yan. So anong gagawin mo, Miss Bulaon? Kiklaim mo pa ba sa BOC yun? Abandon mo na yon. Sino ngayon? Kung naka-insured yun, babayaran ka ng insurance company for total damage. Right, Miss Bulaon? Pag binayaran ngayon yun ng pinayaran sa iyo yun, okay, the underwriters or the insurance company becomes now the owner. Siya na ngayon na magiging importer. Kung ilalabas ngayon ni underwriter o insurance company, yung kabayo from the BOC, siya na magbabayad ng duties and taxes. Hindi na po ikaw, Miss Bulaon, kasi you already abandoned the goods. That's why the underwriter or insurance company becomes only the owner of the goods when the goods are abandoned by the importer. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po? Maliwanag? Now, salvors means person who saved the goods from a shipwreck. Yan po yung mga mangingisda. Nadadaanan nila yung imported goods, lulutang-lutang doon sa dagat. Again, Miss Bulaon, what is that word when goods are thrown overboard the vessel? Jettison po. When goods are jettisoned or thrown overboard the vessel, someone would be picking it picking it up or saving it. Ngayon, pag hindi na po ma-identify or ma-locate kung sino may-ari, then the one who save it is called salvors. Then the salvors now step into the shoes of the original owner and becomes now the importer. And as salvor and declared to be the importer, then the salvor, before he can or she can get it from the BOC legally, he or she should pay also the duties and taxes. Klaro, guys? Klaro po, guys? Yan po yun. So there are 4 persons mentioned under Section 404. Consignee or importer. Number 2, holder of the bill of lading or airway bill. Number 3, okay, underwriters or insurance in case of abandoned goods. Number 4, okay, salvors in case of goods saved or salvaged from a shipwreck at the sea. Klaro, guys? So, ano pong epekto nun? Of course, pagka ikaw ang may-ari, under letter A ka, ikaw magbabayad ng duties and taxes. Pag letter B ka, okay, holder ka ng airway bill or bill of lading, ikaw magbayad ng duties and taxes. Kung ikaw naman ang underwriter, sa'yo napunta yung goods imported dyan, bayad ka ng duties and taxes. Pag ikaw naman po ang salvors, bayad ka rin ng duties and taxes po. Klaro, guys? Klaro? Now, 405, please. Karandang. Section. Relieve, hindi relieve, relieve po. Favor, in favor, in favor, in favor. Okay, ulitin ko. Dali lang po. Para maintindihan ninyo. Okay, unless relieved by laws, rules, and regulation. When you import, you pay. Maliwanag po? Mr. Karandang? So, class, tandaan niyo po ito. When the importer buys goods or buy goods from foreign country and the same goods is brought into the Philippines, the general rule is this. You pay, Mr. Importer. Wala po tayong magagawa doon. You pay the taxes, the duties and taxes po. Wala po tayong magagawa doon. However, nakalagay po doon, unless relieved by laws, unless the importer is not required to pay the duties and taxes, that would be the time that the importer will not be required. Maliwanag po. But as a general rule, bayad ka po. Maliwanag? Yan po ang regulasyon. Maliwanag po. And these taxes shall include not only duties, taxes, it includes also other fees and other charges po. That is related, of course, to what has been imported. Maliwanag po ba? And the liability for duties, taxes, fees, and other charges constitute a personal debt. Meaning, personal mong pagkakautang sa gobyerno. Imagine, grabe, no? Pag ikaw, Mr. Karandang, nag-import ka, ang rule, bayad ka. Exception, kung exempted ka. Right, Mr. Karandang? But if you're not exempted, Mr. Karandang, that liability for duties, taxes, fees, and other constitute a personal mong pagkakautang in favor of the government po. In other words, if you cannot pay, the BOC can go after your properties po, Mr. Karandang. Naintindihan mo? Grabe, no? Hindi ka lang makabayad, no? Okay. Hindi ka makabayad? Okay. Gusto mong kunin yung goods, then we will be looking for your other properties to pay for the duties and taxes. And if you cannot really pay, then it will be forfeited by the government. Ganun lang kasimple. Intindihan? So, what is the liability of the importer? It is liability for duties and taxes, fees, and other charges po. And that liability is in favor of the government. And that liability constitutes a personal debt. And it is enforceable and... Nakakainis ha? Bakit ganon? Nag-lost connection na naman tayo. Sandali, nawala ako. Daan-daan lang. Nawala. Naglo-lost connection ako. Okay, I'm back again. Sorry for the inconvenience and sorry for the interruption because of our internet connectivity. Sorry guys. No, therefore, yan po ang rule. Biro mo, nag-import ka, natural, bayad ka. Ayan po exception. Ang exemption, yan po ang rule. Pero kung exempted ka, swerte mo. Okay? Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Now, that personal debt is demandable. Sinong pwede mag-demand? The government against the importer. And that personal debt can be only discharged or the importer can only be freed or exonerated from that payment of duties and taxes upon payment in full. Bayaran mo muna para mawala yung personal obligation mo sa Bureau of Customs. Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Okay, maliwanag po ha. Ulitin ko po. It constitutes a personal debt, meaning the BOC can go after you even to your property to pay the duties and taxes. And when the duties and taxes becomes demandable, anytime they can demand or the BOC can demand from the importer. Mawawala lang yung pagkakautang mo pag nabayaran mo na ng buo. Maliwanag po ma? Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po ba? Okay, yan. First importation is this. At si Mr. Karandang nag-import ulit dito sa Port of Manila. Mr. Karandang has not yet paid the duties and taxes, let's say, 1.2 million. Ang duties and taxes. Okay? Maliwanag po. Mr. Karandang, naintindihan. Will the BOC release the goods even without payment of duties and taxes? The answer is no, of course. Hindi pwede. You pay first before the BOC allows the release. Tama? Ganun po ang rule. In other words, guys, while the goods is in the custody of the Bureau of Customs and the duties, taxes, fees, and other charges have not been paid yet by the importer, the Bureau of Customs can... Sandali lang po. Mr. Anthony, anong problema ng internet natin? Talagang ganyan? Ano bang connection natin, Anthony? Pasensya na kayo guys, wala akong magawa . Anyway, ile-lecture ko din naman ito sa 3B, pero puputol-putol, sundan nyo na lang, ne? Mr. Karandang, Miss Bulaon, sundan nyo na lang, no? Okay, while the goods is in the custody of the BOC, no payment has been made yet by the importer. Of course. No payment, no release, Miss Bulaon. Tama? Okay. No payment, no release. Ganun lang ang rule. Ganun lang kasimple. Mr. Importer, binayaran mo na? Hindi pa po. Wala pang release. Nabayaran mo na? There can be release. Assuming what has been paid is 1.2 million. And after receipt by the BOC regarding proof of payment, definitely, the BOC will allow the release. Right, Mr. Karandang? Natanggap na nila yung bayad eh. Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Okay, ngayon, after the release has been made, there was a discovery of error. Dapat pala, ang bayaran niya is 1.3 million. May kulang ba, Mr. Karandang? O ngayon, nakalabas na yung kargamento, ano pa i-hold mo, right, Mr. Karandang? Sabi dyan, okay, this liability may be enforced while goods are still in the custody of the BOC. The problem is the goods has been already released to the importer. So, paano pa abulin yung 100,000, Mr. Karandang? Kung ikaw, Mr. Karandang, si importer, dapat ang bayaran mo 1.3, kaya lang 1.2 na bayaran mo, pero pinayagan ka, na-discover lang nila yung kulang after release. Magkukusa ka bang pumunta sa BOC? Sabihin mong ganon. Mr. BOC, kulang pala ako ng 100,000. Gagawin mo ba yan, Mr. Karandang? O, yung itsura mo na yan. Pares, di ba? Pares tayo, maski man ako. Tanga kayo, nagkamali kayo. O ngayon, sabihin ganon. Mr. Karandang, kulang ka. Teka muna, nakalabas na ako eh. O, di ba? O, may magagawa ma'am BOC, Miss Bulaon, sa 100,000. Tinatanong nga kita eh. Ba't ako tatanungin mo? Wala na silang magagawa. Paano yon? Okay, may dumating na panibagong shipment si Mr. Karandang. Ang duties and taxes is 600,000. O yan, Mr. Karandang. Dati ayaw mo akong pansinin sa 100,000 ha. Hindi ko palalabasin itong second shipment po unless you pay this and you pay the difference of 100,000. Yan po ang gagawin, Miss Bulaon. Maliwanag? So, naintindihan mo na. Pag may dumating pa, sabi ni Mr. Karandang, wala na akong darating. O, sabihin, wala ka na magagawa. Mag-aabang ka ngayon ng shipment kung kailan uli magpaparating si Mr. Karandang. Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? Maliwanag? Okay, next, 406. Yes. Trician Garcia. Miss Garcia, ganyan ba talaga yung picture profile mo? Nakalabas yung balikat? Ganyan ba talaga? Okay, kasi nakalabas yung balikat eh. Okay, parang si Miss Gamotea, nakalabas din ng balikat eh. Yung lalapad ng balikat eh. Okay, next. Ms. Gutierrez, what is the rule regarding government importation? What is the rule regarding government importation? Nag-import si government, nagbabayad ba? What is the rule? Mr. Karandang. So, Mr. Karandang, please state the rule regarding 406. No, state the rule. Okay, when the government imports, they have to pay. That's the general rule, exception. Exception when the government importation is covered by Section 800. Hindi na siya magbabayad. Yun po yun. Ang general rule po, government importation, then the government pays. Exception, when the government importation is exempt by Section 800, then that would be the time that the government will not be required to pay. Even the President of the Philippines, even the Bureau of Customs, when they import, they have to pay duties and taxes as a general rule. Exception, when their importation is covered by Section 800 of this code. Maliwanag po, Mr. Karandang? Kahit na po si Presidente, ang general rule sa kanya, magbayad ka. Unless, Mr. President, your importation is covered by Section 800. Mr. Bureau of Customs, nag-import kami. Oh, dapat magbayad kayo kasi sabi ng 406, bayad kayo. However, you can ask for exception or exemption when your shipment or importation, Mr. Bureau of Customs, is covered by Section 800. If not, then you have to pay. Right, Mr. Karandang? And what consists government of the Philippines? It consists of the following: branches, instrumentalities, corporation, government-owned and controlled corporation. That includes the local government unit, the national government. Yan po lahat yan. Branches, instrumentalities po. Ano po yung mga branches? Katulad ng Land Bank of the Philippines. Yan po. Mga government po yan. Okay. Importation by Philippine Economic Zone Authority. Yes po. Yung mismong office ng Philippine Economic Zone Authority. Importation by the city government of Mabalacat. Kasama po sila sa government. Then therefore, as a general rule, their importation is also exempt. Or is subject to payment of duties and taxes unless their importation is covered by Section 800 po. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po. Again, what is the rule, Mr. Karandang, with respect to government importation? Unless and the government consists of instrumentalities, branches, and ano pa? Government-owned and controlled corporation. So kasama po ang government yan. So whether it is an instrumentality, branches, or subordinate, or government-owned and or controlled corporation, the general, they have to pay for their importation. Exception or exemption is only Section 800. Kaya kayo, pagdating ng araw, napunta kayo sa gobyerno, oh, Bureau of Customs ako naniningil ng import duty. Dapat hindi ako magbayad. Hindi kami magbayad, kami nga naniningil. No, unless you can prove that the BOC importation is covered by Section 800, then you have to pay. Right, Mr. Karandang? Section 407, Ms. Gutierrez. Always po, the goods declaration shall be always in consonance with international standards. And that standards that I am referring to is the revised Kyoto standard. Okay? So, ibig sabihin po, yung format po ng goods declaration natin, later on, I will be giving you a copy of goods declaration para malaman ninyo ano ba yung pinag-uusapan natin goods declaration. Continue. The data required, the information required. Okay, go. Okay. The data required shall be all the necessary information to compute and calculate and determine the correct duties, taxes, and other charges po. So, yun lang po ang kailangan ng BOC. Data on value, data on classification, and data on insurance freight, FOB value. Those are the data that is required by the Bureau of Customs, and those data are required for the computation and calculation of the correct duties, taxes, and other charges. Yun lang po ang kailangan ng BOC. And this state data to be used in computing the duties and taxes shall be also used by the Philippine Statistics Authority for statistical purposes. What goods are regularly imported and what goods are not regularly imported. Yan po ang sinasabi dyan. So yung mga information po, yun lang pong kailangan ng BOC for purposes of determining the taxes po. And information and data required by the PSA for statistical purposes. And the goods declaration as far as practicable, it shall be lodged. What? It shall be lodged electronically. In other words, class, the rule is this. Lodgement is electronic. Exception, manual filing po. Okay? So, ibig sabihin po niyan, ang lodgement po, palagi pong electronic. However, there would be an instance or circumstance that the BOC will allow manual or physical filing. Next, please. So, what are those supporting documents? Number 1 po, ang i-attach po doon po sa mismong goods declaration, the goods declaration shall be accompanied by 3 basic documents. Bill of lading if it is via sea freight or airway bill if it is via air freight. Guys, klaro? Second, commercial invoice po. Yan po yung basic document na kailangan. Maliwanag po ba? Number 3 po, packing list. O, ito po yun, no? Para malaman ninyo, these are the basic documents. Okay? BL? Nakikita ba to? Can you see my drawing at the board? Guys, nakikita nyo to. Tapos number 3 po is PL. Ayan, commercial invoice, then packing list po. Yan po yung 3 basic documents that is to be attached to the goods declaration. Mr. Karandang, klaro? Okay, ibig sabihin po niyan, dyan lang po ang kailangan. Okay? Now, this document should be always or should be written in our official language. Ano ba yung official language natin? O yan, international documents ito. Natural, dapat isulat ito sa English. Hindi naman dapat isulat sa Tagalog. Question, can these documents be written in another language other than English? The answer is yes, except, okay, the answer is yes, provided that there is what? Interpretation or translation. Pwede. Sinulat yung BL sa Hapon, kailangan po i-translate. Pero sino pong gagawa nun? Susulat sa Hapon. Next, please. No, goods declaration must be lodged. Mr. Karandang, are you there? Is this last paragraph related to our letter preparation, Mr. Karandang? Oh, this is related to request to lift abandonment notice, Mr. Karandang. Huwag mo nang isipin yan. Sasabihin ko na kagad sa'yo. Kasi, naintindihan? Yes, yan po yung relation yan. Kaya nga tinuro ko sa inyo eh. Kasi, when the goods declaration is not lodged within 15 days, it shall be declared what? Impliedly abandoned. Maliwanag, guys? Maliwanag? And there are so many cases of abandonment. Implied abandonment. O, yan. Number 1. Lista nyo dyan. Para at least alam ninyo. Number 1. Maliwanag ha, para magkaintindihan tayo. Failure to lodge That is one of the implied abandonment. Tama, Mr. Karandang? Kailan daw yung failure to lodge? When is the goods declaration required to be lodged? When? Within 15 days from date of discharge of the last package from the vessel or aircraft, right? Without extension or on the 16th day, the goods declaration has not been lodged or filed, then it shall be declared impliedly abandoned. Right, Ms. Bulaon? And when there is a valid reason to extend it, the application for extension should be made prior the expiration of the original 15 days. Paano yon, Mr. Karandang? So, 15 days po. Kunyari, pang 15 days ngayon. Hanggang ngayon na lang pwedeng i-lodge yung goods declaration. Mag-i-expire bukas. Eh, hindi pa kayang i-lodge ngayon. The importer can ask for the extension before the expiration. So, gagawin niya yon ngayon or kahapon. Or kahapon pa. Pero kung extension niya, ipapile niya bukas, nag-expire ngayon, wala nang i-extend. Why? Why? Because there is nothing to extend. Right, Mr. Karandang? Another implied abandonment, failure to pay. Alam mo ba yung failure to pay, Mr. Karandang? Failure to pay the duties and taxes from receipt of the final assessment notice po. Pag hindi mo nabayaran, within 15 days, again, that is what? Impliedly abandoned. Nabayaran mo, pero hindi mo na i-claim. Failure to claim within 30 days. Again, it shall be declared impliedly abandoned. Failure to complete. Mr. Karandang, ano yun? Failure to complete. Okay. Ano po yung, anong klaseng goods declaration pinag-uusapan natin sa failure to complete? What kind of goods declaration are we talking about here? Provisional po yan. Failure to withdraw from a bonded warehouse, 9 months, extendable to 12 months. Failure to withdraw goods from a public bonded warehouse or a customs bonded manufacturing warehouse, that again is impliedly abandoned. Failure to mark the goods. So, sabihin, pinamamarkahan sa'yo. Sabi niya, Mr. Doroteo, yung goods mo, lagyan mo ng mark where it has been produced or manufactured. Failure to mark the goods. Okay? Again, it will be declared impliedly abandoned. Okay? Now, tingnan mo dito, provided, however, that the period of the lodgement of the goods declaration may be adjusted by the commissioner. Tingnan mo may provided as a general rule, 15 days to lodge. Right, Mr. Karandang? Can it be made by the BOC commissioner to 20 days? Okay? So walang request from the importer yan pwedeng gamitin ni commissioner o gawin na natin 20 days. Tama po ba? Pwede bang iksian niyang ni Mr. Commissioner na gawing 7 days na lang? Yes, it can be decreased or it can be increased. It can be shortened or it can be extended. In other words, it can be shortened. From 15 days, pwedeng gawing 7 days. Ginawa na po ni Commissioner yan. Ngayon po, 7 days na lang po. Mas maiksi na po ngayon. Kasi po, nakalagay doon sa ilalim. Provided that the Commissioner, provided that the period of the lodgement of the goods declaration may be adjusted by the Commissioner of Customs. Ibig sabihin po dyan, pwedeng gawing from 15, gawing 20 days. Tama, Mr. Karandang? From 15 gawing 10 days, from 15 gawing 7 days. Ang ginawa ni Commissioner po ngayon, from 15, 7 days na lang. Oh, sa 7 days, pabor ba yan sa importer? Kanino po pabor? Sa government, of course, kasi pag hindi mo naabot yung 7 days, oh, it will be declared abandoned. When the goods are abandoned, it becomes the property of the government. Right, Mr. Karandang? Okay, next please. 408. Ms. Gutierrez! Huwag mo na akong tawagin yes, sir. Alam ko, yes, sir ako. Okay, class. The lodgement of goods declaration is anywhere. Kahit saan po. As long the lodgement is to be lodged through the so-called value-added service providers po. So, kahit naman po, kahit nasa bahay ka lang, can you lodge it, Mr. Karandang? Yes, because it is electronic. Basta merong internet, you can lodge it. And you can lodge it into the system of the BOC wherever you are as long there is what? Internet connection. Kung nasa may Zamboanga ka, yung goods mo nandito sa Maynila, can you lodge your goods declaration although you are in Zamboanga, Mr. Karandang? The answer is yes. Kasi po, dumadaan ka naman sa value-added service provider at yung pong value-added service provider system is connected with the BOC system. Ganun lang po kasimple. So therefore, wherever you are, you can lodge the goods declaration. Tama, Mr. Karandang? As long there is internet. Kahit na sabihin mo nasa Cebu ka, ikaw ay Cebuano importer ka, at yung goods mo nasa Port of Manila, can you lodge the goods declaration? Yes po. Kasi po, internet po eh. Dadaan ka lang sa value-added service provider. Continue. Yes. Once the goods declaration has been lodged, can you change or amend it, Mr. Karandang? Yes. For valid reason and for valid reason and under terms and condition and regulation, you can amend. At pag sinabi mong amyandahan, babaguhin mo, tama ba, Mr. Karandang, yung idiniklara mo? Okay. As long the goods declaration has been lodged or in case the goods declaration has been lodged, the importer can ask for changes or modification or amendment. Provided that the request to amend the goods declaration together with the intended amendment. So, ibig sabihin, bago mo siya baguhin, you will write the BOC, what are you going to amend? What are you going to change? Okay? Ibig sabihin yan, kung may babaguhin ka, Mr. Importer, dapat ipadala mo sa BOC yan. However, no amendment shall be allowed after examination of the goods has been completed. Naalala niyo yung general rules regarding amendment of cargo manifest, Miss Bulaon? Ako nagturo yata sa inyo niyan, tama ba? Kailan hindi pinapayagang baguhin yan? Goods declaration. After examination, hindi final, examination lang po. Mr. Karandang, ito po ngayon po yung examination naganap. Tapos na po, nabuksan na po yung goods, tapos na, examine na. Eto naman si importer, after examination lang, nag-request ng amendment. Papayagan ba, Mr. Karandang? Bakit? Before examination. Tama ba? Before determination of the final assessment or examination of goods. Tama ba? Bakit nga ba pagka after examination, hindi mo na pwedeng baguhin? Miss Bulaon, ano yung reason ko bakit hindi ka papayagang mag-amyenda after examination? O kaya nga, ano nga, bakit nga ba? Pag na-check na, hindi mo na siya pwedeng baguhin. Yung laman ng goods declaration mo. Kasi, paper goods declaration versus actual examination. Bakit nga ba? After examination, you will not be allowed. Miss Bulaon, ganito lang po ang ganito lang po ang reason. Hindi mo naman siya babaguhin kung hindi ko nabuko, right? Mr. Karandang? Tama ba yon? Tama ba yung logic na yon? Kung hindi ko na-discover yung discrepancy, babaguhin ba ng importer? Hindi po, hindi babaguhin. Pero na-discover, kaya po magre-request ng amenda. Tama? Yun po ang reason. The importer would have not asked for amendment had the examiner did not discover the difference or discrepancy, or the importer would not ask for amendment if the examiner failed to discover the discrepancy. Kaya lang po nag-apply ng amendment si importer kasi nahuli. Kung hindi po nahuli, magpapile ba ng amyenda si Mr. Importer, Karandang? Nakalusot So hindi na magpapaamyenda. Nahuli, magpapaamyenda. Tama ba? Papayagan ba ng BOC? Teka muna, tinatanong ko, nahuli na nga na-examine, nahuli. Ang sabi mo, second hand, nung examinin, lumabas, brand new. Ngayon, sabi ni po, sandali lang po sir, babaguhin ko po. Papayagan ba ng examiner yon? Hindi na, kasi na-discover na Kung hindi nahuli ka na Kung hindi pala nahuli, hindi mo pa babaguhin yan. Tama, Mr. Karandang? Anong sasabihin mo, Miss Bulaon, pagka ikaw yung examiner, ako yung appraiser, ako yung importer? Miss Bulaon, sandali lang. Na-examine mo na pala, babaguhin ko po from second hand to brand new. Anong sasabihin mo? Hindi. Ang sasabihin ko, neck mo. Gaganituin ko siya. Eto ka, Kung hindi ko pa nabuking, hindi mo babaguhin, right? Miss Bulaon? Ang sasabihin mo, neck mo. Ganun lang, di ba? Hindi ko pa nahuli, hindi pa Hindi mo babaguhin. Anong lesson? Mr. Karandang? If you want to make any amendment, do it before examination. That's di ba? Prior examination or prior final assessment. Tama ba? After final assessment or after examination, no more amendment shall be allowed, right? So moral lesson, if you want to change it or if you want to amend it, do it before examination. Ms. Gutierrez, did you get it? Kaya kung may babaguhin ka, medyo tagilid ka, alam mo, baka mahuli. Baka mamya Saka ako na lang babaguhin after examination. No, hindi na po pwede kasi napakalinaw po ng batas. Tama? Carol Garcia, Section 409, please. Therefore, goods declaration as a general rule may be lodged only upon arrival of the goods. That is only a general rule, right, Mr. Karandang? Is there an exception? So, hindi pa yung pag dumating yung goods, saka pa lang pwedeng mag-file ng goods declaration to the value-added service provider po. Ito po, pagdating po ng goods. Is there an exception to the rule? Mr. Almete, is there an exception to the rule that goods declaration must be lodged or shall be lodged only upon arrival of the goods? Pag dumating na yung barko, saka lang po pwedeng mag-lodge. Is there an exception to that rule? Ms. Garcia, is there an exception to that rule? So what is the exception? Section 409 po, ang tawag po din sa exception na yon or exception sa yon, advance lodgement. Kaya po advance lodgement po because prior to the arrival of the goods, hindi pa dumarating yung kargamento, and yet the importer is allowed to lodge the goods declaration. Mr. Karandang. Okay? In other words, class, hindi pa dumarating, nasa biyahe pa lang, the importer can already lodge the goods declaration. Let's say nasa China Sea pa lang or nasa dagat pa lang yung barko, pero yung importer pwede nang mag-lodge ng goods declaration. But as a general rule, upon arrival is the lodgement. But exception 409 po, advance lodgement and clearance. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa dumarating po yung kargamento, nakapag-lodge na ng goods declaration si importer, Mr. Karandang, right? Para bang ako, Mr. Karandang, general rule, pag o-order ako ng hamburger sa McDonald's, pupunta ako doon. Saka lang ipoprocess yung order ko pagka naibigay ko na yung order sa'yo, Mr. Karandang. Tama ba? Ngayon, nasa biyahe pa lang ako, nasa Systems Plus pa lang ako, papunta lang ng McDonald's. Tumawag ako sa iyo. Mr. Karandang, pakihanda mo na ako. Pwede ba yon, Mr. Karandang? Ganun din po sa goods declaration. Arrival of the goods, then lodgement. Before arrival of the goods, then lodgement po. Ngayon, question, Mr. Karandang. What shipment may be lodged in advance or what shipment, okay, may be lodged in advance in relation to Section 409. What kind of shipment are these? Kasi po pati paglabas pagdating labas kaagad Kasi nakapile na yung goods declaration, tama ba Mr. Karandang? Pagdating, labas kaagad. What kind of shipment are these? Super Green Lane. No, what I'm asking is what kind of shipment. I'm not asking for the selectivity or selection or the lane shipment. What I'm asking is what kind of shipment are these? These are what? Highly sensitive time shipment. Maliwanag? Yan po yun. Perishable items po, pwede po dito. Maliwanag? Mr. Karandang, dangerous goods po, pwede dito. Kasi po, hindi dapat nagtatagal sila sa pier. Kaya po, sensitive or time-sensitive shipment may be lodged in advance under Section 409. Pagdating po sa eroplano, yung mga organs, human organs to be donated to a donee or a recipient. Yes po, kasi po, pag pinagtagal po yan sa loob ng customs, nako, malamang yung tatanggap po ng human organs, mamatay. Mete. Naintindihan, Ms. Bulaon? So in other words, class, time-sensitive shipment may be the subject of advanced lodgement and clearance. But non-time sensitive, pwede naman po siya kahit non-perishable. Kaya lang po, subject to rules and regulation and terms and condition. So, aalamin din ng BOC which shipment may be the subject of advanced lodgement and clearance po. Maliwanag? Maliwanag, guys? Okay, susunod. Entry of goods in part for consumption and in for warehousing. Yan. Yan ha. Pakikita ko naman sa inyo, ano ba to? 1 BL, yan ha. Tanggalin ko na to. Ang dumi na, no? Okay, 1 BL covers 2 packages. 1 BL. Yan po, no? Nakikita ba? 1 BL covering 2 packages arrive at the port of Manila. Mr. Karandang, do you see or can you see the illustration at the board? Now, under section 410, okay, 410 provides for allowing 1 bill of lading containing 2 packages, 1 to be cleared via CE and 1 to be cleared under warehousing entry. Naintindihan mo, Mr. Karandang? 1 package is for consumption entry and 1 package is for warehousing entry. Mr. Karandang, naiintindihan ba? Ms. Bulaon? Mr. Almete? In other words, 1 BL covering 2 packages, the importer of these 2 packages may file 2 entry. 1 for consumption entry for 1 package and warehousing entry for the second package. Is that allowed, Mr. Karandang? Yes, that is allowed under section 410. In part of this package for consumption entry and in part of these packages for warehousing entry. That is 2 packages po. But this is not allowed. If 1 BL contains 1 package, yan po no, ito po pwede. Yung isang pakete for consumption entry, bayad ka ng duties and taxes, yung isang pakete for warehousing. Hindi ka magbabayad ng duties and taxes. But this one po, isang pakete. Yung kalahati daw, CE, yung kalahati daw, warehousing entry. Hindi po siya pinapayagan. Maliwanag po? Maliwanag po? Bakit po? Bakit kaya hindi pinapayag? Kasi dito, at least ma-identify mo alin ang for consumption entry at alin po ang for warehousing entry. But this one, it would be difficult on the part of the BOC which part of the content of this one package is for CE and which part of the content of this package is for warehousing entry. Biro mo, ito yung banda dito. Di ba? It's awkward. It's unusual, Mr. Karandang. Okay lang kung magkahiwalay. Ito magkasama eh. Hindi po pwedeng payagan ang in part for consumption and in part for warehousing. Maliwanag? Okay? Maliwanag po. Maliwanag? Okay. Let us now move on to what are the contents of the goods declaration. Ayan, pakibasa, Ms. Javier, Ms. Gutierrez. Wala na akong tubig. Mr. Karandang, Wala na naman akong tubig. Kulang pala sa akin yung mali. Magkano ba itong ganito? 15? Parang sinalok lang to sa deep well yata. Ang bilis maubos. Ang lakas ko talaga sa tubig kasi lakas ko magsalita eh. Kasi gusto ko maliwanag ang lecture ko eh. Kaya lang, kulang yung tubig. Alam mo, nakuha ko na ngayon doon, dalawa. Dadalawa na lang yung tira. Tinatanong ko nga kung may kasunod pa. Depende daw kung mag-i-sponsor. Akala ko naman yung supply ko ng tubig hanggang March. Yung pala, itong week lang na to. Grabe naman yan. Alam mo, Miss Bulaon, kung alam ko lang na hanggang bukas lang yung supply ko ng tubig. Miss Bulaon? Ba't naging choppy nung pinag-uusapan na namin yung supply ko ng tubig ah? Okay din to mga to, kausap ah. Ang galing ah. Sabi ko, Miss Bulaon, kung alam ko lang na hanggang Webes lang yung tubig ko, hanggang bukas na lang pala yung supply ko ng tubig kay Kajanis, sana kada inom ko, kinukutsara ko para matipid. Nano? Sino nagsasalita na yan? Si Miss Dighay. Ano daw ang sabi, Mr. Karandang? Alin yung blue? Yung yung isang galon. Grabe ka naman yan. Ang tingin mo naman. Ano ba tingin mo sa akin, Misaba, magsiswimming? Budget. Ano yun? Saan ko ilalagay yun? Dito. Kasi yung tubig namin dito, yung supply, medyo hindi ko type yung lasa. Medyo sumasama ang pakiramdam ko pag iniinom ko. Kaya, alam mo, medyo choosy tayo ng konti eh. Utang may nagre-react ah. Mr. Karandang, hanggang Webis na lang pala yung tubig ko. May dalawa pa naman ako doon. Hanggang next week, Monday, meron pa uli ako. Maya naman kayo. Okay, next. 411, please. What Section 411 provides what are those contents? Hindi po contents ng package. What are those details and information to be contained in a piece of paper? And that piece of paper that I am referring to is the goods declaration po. Ano po ang magiging laman niya? Basa, Miss Gutierrez! First. Teka muna po, sandali lang po. Iisa-isahin na natin para maging madali. First content, the name of the consignee. Nakalagay po yan doon. Tama? Nakalagay po. Para po, pwede bang yung pangalan ng consignee hindi nakalagay doon sa goods declaration? Kanino i-deliver yung goods kung hindi nakalagay yung pangalan ng consignee? Tama, Mr. Karandang? Okay, go. Miss Gutierrez. Importante po yan. Name of the shipper. Yung nag-export po from foreign country. At sino po ang tatanggap sa Pilipinas, nakalagay po yan sa goods declaration. Continue. Teka, sandali lang po. Pangalan ng barko, tama. Pangalan ng eroplano, tama. Yan po. Pwede bang pagsamahin yung dalawa? Mr. Karandang? Hindi pwede. Kailangan isa lang po. Pagka sinip via sea, pangalan ng barko. Pag sinip or if the shipment has been shipped via air, then the name of the aircraft, right? Or importing aircraft. Port of departure, saan po galing? Sa ibang bansa. Port of destination, saan po papunta? Port of Manila, MICP, or NAIA po. Depende po kung saan i-discarga yung kargamento. Next, please. Yes. Yes. Lahat po yung information na yan, makikita nyo po yan sa goods declaration. And later on, I will give you a copy. Siguro mga next week, mabibigyan ko kayo ng kopya niyan. Okay? If in the goods contained therein. Pakibasa nga. If in bulk, let's say, kung containerized ba, dapat nakadeklara po. If it is non-containerized, then it should be indicated or contained also in the goods declaration. So pagka sinabing containerized, if it is in FCL, if it is non-containerized, either in bulk, in package, or in cartons po. Okay? Another is the nature and commodity description. Kailangan po ba itong nature and commodity description, Mr. Karandang? Yes, that is important. How can they classify it and how can they find the correct rate of duty if this information as to nature and commodity description is not to be indicated? Next, please. Value. What kind of value is this? Is this X work value, FOB value, CFR value, or CIF value? Right, Mr. Karandang? Para po malaman kung ano po ang dutiable value po. Yan po yun. Next, Mr. Miss Gutierrez. Where the declarant Okay, ganito po, paliliwanag ko po kayo sa inyo yung substantial, no? Kung kailan po dumating, hindi po malaman kung kailan dumating. Mr. Karandang, kailan dumating? Kasi nakalagay po dyan, no, date of arrival of the importing vessel or aircraft. Hindi po alam kung kailan dumating. Oh. So pagka ganun po, provisional po ang ipapile. Tama po ba, Mr. Karandang? Now, even without the date of arrival of the shipment, can the BOC compute the duties and taxes? Yes, of course. Ano ba naman ang epekto ng arrival ng barko o aeroplano sa computation ng duties and taxes? Because in the computation of duties and taxes, what is required is only the quantity, the volume, the description of the goods, plus, of course, the value. Right, Mr. Karandang? Yun lang ang kailangan mo, right? Yes. Ngayon, wala po nakalagay dyan kung sino po ang shipper or seller. Goods, provisional goods declaration ang kailangan, right? Tama ba, Mr. Karandang? Even without the name of the supplier or seller, can the BOC compute the duties and taxes? Yes, kasi hindi naman po kailangan yung name of shipper, tama? Sa computation ng duties and taxes, right, Mr. Karandang? What about if the rate of exchange is not indicated in the bill of lading or airwave or in the goods declaration? Can they compute it? Hindi rin papayagan ng goods declaration or provisional goods declaration because what information is required is substantial po. Kailangan po kasi nila yun. Tama? What about if the value is not indicated in the goods declaration? Will they allow provisional goods declaration? The answer is not because value is required as part of the substantial information. Right, Mr. Karandang? So therefore, kung yung pong information or dokumento na hindi naman kailangan po sa determination ng duties and taxes, then the BOC can allow provisional goods declaration. But if the document such as commercial invoice, okay, wherein the value is indicated, cannot be submitted, then no provisional goods declaration. Antayin mo, wala kang provisional goods declaration. Maliwanag? Now, ang tanong ko sa inyo ganito, bakit yung provisional goods declaration is allowed? Kulang na nga yung dokumento pero pinapayagan pa rin kasi kumpleto naman ng information. Now, what is the purpose of the importer in availing of the 45 or the provisional goods declaration? Mr. Karandang, ano ang purpose niya? Kung kulang, hindi siya makapag-lodge, tama? At pag kulang at yung po naman kulang, hindi naman po substantial, pwede pa rin siya mag-lodge. Kaya lang provisional goods declaration. Now, what's the purpose of the importer in lodging a provisional goods declaration? Of course, to repeat the 15 days to lodge. Maliwanag? Kasi pagka hindi ka nag-lodge within 15 days dahil kulang, after 15 days, it will be declared impliedly abandoned. Right? Now, to avoid that situation, anong gagawin mo? Mag-apply ka ng provisional goods declaration, at least yung 15 days magiging 45 days. Klaro, guys? Klaro, guys? Guys, talaga naman. What time is it, Mr. Karandang? Okay, guys, I will continue my lecture for 4:11, 4:12, and 4:13 and onwards po. Kung madadagdagan pa. Maliwanag? Maliwanag po? Maliwanag. Oh, question. Miss Gamotea, do you have any question? Naintindihan? Miss Pagsino, do you have any question? Miss Garcia, Trishan, and Carol? Naintindihan? Okay, so this afternoon, 1 to 2:30, I'll be discussing to you two sections. Or probably, baka umabot ako na, guys, kasi iniisip ko, kung hindi tayo medyo papaspas ng konti, baka mag-overlap yung i-handle nilang nung ibang instructor sa inyo pang third year subject. Kasi ako, naka-assign ako sa second year eh. Sa first year at second year ako, wala yata akong third year. Baka mag-overlap, kaya medyo papaspada natin ng konti, ha? Mr. Karandang. Maliwanag? Okay, kaya medyo hindi natin susundin yung every week. Ito lang ile-lecture ko kasi mahaba eh. Meron pa akong 1 to 2:30. Mamaya, baka umabot ako ng 4:1:12, 4:1:13, 4:1:14. So, kung hanggang saan yung matatapos ko for 1 hour. Maliwanag, Mr. Karandang? But remind me of the time. Baka mamaya lumagpas ako. Okay? Okay. Yes? Basta palaging naka-Google Meet ako. Ako magpapadala ng, wag nyo na intindihin yung link. Ako na lang po. Nakakaya naman sa inyo eh. Yung criminal water na lang ang kailangan ko. Kasi naubos. Miss Bulaon, ala na. Oh, ala ng laman. Oh. Miss Bulaon, parang naging choppy. Choppy. Oh, talagang Mr. Karandang, napapansin ko pagkakagastusan nagiging choppy yung boses ko, no? Parang, Miss Due, how are you? Ayos lang. Miss Gutierrez, what are the types of goods declaration again? The following are... What are the two types of goods declaration as to information? Complete and incomplete or provisional goods declaration. Maliwanag po? Is advance lodgement of goods declaration and clearance allowed? For what kind of shipment? Advance lodgement of goods declaration and clearance is allowed for time-sensitive shipments such as perishable goods, dangerous goods, and human organs for donation po. Maliwanag po, yan po ang pwedeng gamitan ng advance lodgement. And normally, what are the contents of a goods declaration, Ms. Gutierrez? The nature and commodity description, the quantity, the volume, and of course, the most important one, the value of the goods, right? Yan po ang mga laman. Marks and numbers, tama po? the time of arrival or the arrival of the shipment. Tama po ba? Yan po ang mga laman ng goods declaration. May liwanag? Okay, you're dismissed and see you again at exactly 1 o'clock. Miss Gamotea, pag sinabi kong 1 o'clock, again, sasarado ko yung 1 o'clock, then wala na akong i-admit. Maliwanag?